Hey everybody, it's John Barrows. Welcome to Make It Happen Mondays, second installment here. So we're going to be going through, we actually started picking themes. Last week was our first Make It Happen Monday, and it was just open forum, just trying to add recurring value to everybody who's paying attention these days, trying to get some knowledge out there, share the stuff that I've been learning, trying to stay up to date on what's happening in the industry and everything else. Now, moving forward with these Make It Happen Mondays, we're going to start picking themes. So the theme for this one is selling to the executive, so selling to the C-suite. And I'm going to share with you some tips and ideas and things to think about, hopefully that you can walk away with immediately and start to apply. And then just open it up for Q&A as we go through this to see who joins us, all right? So, selling to the C-suite, it's funny. People say they sell to the C-suite. It's like, shut up. No, you don't. When was the last time a CEO sat through the entire sales process from prospecting to demo to qualification to presentation to close? It rarely happens. Unless you're selling to the SMB or, real small businesses or something like that. But if you're selling to, mid-market or enterprise or anything like that, you're usually a tier down or a couple tiers down. The problem is most of us sell way below the power line. There's a power line. People above the power line make decisions. People below the power line don't. And our biggest problem in sales is we tend to sell to people that can never say yes. They can say no all day long, but they can never say yes. And so the goal is to try to get above that power line and stay there as long as possible. And that's why, first of all, to start things off, that's why I like the top-down approach when it comes to prospecting. I go after the C-suite, not to sell them, but to say something interesting enough to get their attention and say, hey, by the way, who can I talk to about this? And then having them refer me down to somebody else. But you got to make sure you're relevant there. You can't just be having a generic approach to that. The top-down approach has gotten watered down quite a bit these days because there's a few training organizations, and I'm not going to name names, but they take a very generic approach to the C-suite where they'll blast out a template email saying, hey, here's a little blurb of what we do. Here's here's 3 clients we work with. Who can I speak with about this? And then that's where they focus on their efforts, is when they get that referral. And, I've spoken to CEOs now and CFOs, and they're just getting littered with those. And they're getting sick of them, too, for a couple reasons. One is when it's blatantly obvious who the best person is to speak with about it. It's like, hey, I got this great HR solution, I got these great HR things, whatever it is. Hey, CEO, who's the best person to speak with about this? It's, well, obviously my HR person. So can't you read LinkedIn? So, 1, don't do that when it's obvious who the best person is to speak with. And 2, don't be generic about it. If you're just going to send out a template email, you're doing more harm than good when it comes to your brand. But if you put some thought into it, right, and you really think through, maybe you look at their website or their annual report or something and make a genuine connection there and fire off a value statement, which share some examples of some other clients you've worked with to help resolve those issues or those priorities or whatever, you have a chance of them paying attention to you. Now, I've talked a lot previously about contact strategies. It's not about the one email or the one voicemail. It's about the contact strategy. And I think today it's about telling that story. How many coming after somebody 3, 4, 5, 6 times with something new and something of value every single time, but really telling a story. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of clients and sales reps are using all these sales efficiency tools, the Yeswares, the Tout apps, the Sales Lofts, the Outreach IOs, all these different tools. They're using all these tools that should be sales efficiency tools, but they're really sales automation tools. And again, putting together a cadence that's just a bunch of template emails that is falling on deaf ears these days. So when reaching out to the C-suite, you better have something to say, and you better be thoughtful about it, or else, like I said, don't even bother. And so when it comes to what to say, like what to be thoughtful about, first of all, stuff about them and their business, obviously, right? You do your homework, you look at their website and those things, but also just understanding the language these people speak. As an example, CIOs in the healthcare industry have different priorities than CIOs in the manufacturing industry. If I can understand what those priorities are, I can craft messaging and language around that can hopefully get their attention. Because I've always been a priority-based seller, okay? And to me, I think the hardest 2 things to do in sales, by the way, are to create urgency when it's seemingly not there, and to go over somebody's head without pissing them off, all right? And both of those get addressed to me by selling to priorities. Because if I can't sell my solution if I can't tie my solution to one or two of the top priorities, like when your CEO or executive suite stood up in the beginning of the year and said, "Hey John, these are the three things that we're trying to accomplish this year." If I can't tie my solution to one or two of those, good luck creating urgency. Good luck being able to really drive that larger solution. You might be able to get a point solution down here, but to get that big solution that we're looking for, if we can't tie to those, good luck. So I have to understand what those are. And it's also my favorite way of going over somebody's head without pissing them off. My favorite way is to literally ask these people questions that they don't know the answers to. And a lot of that has to do with where the company is going and how this ties to it and what are some of the KPIs or metrics they're going to use to be able to measure that, right? And so with that, that's why I do a lot of research on what these people think about, what these people care about. I'll do a Google search on priority. If I'm going after a CIO in the healthcare industry, for instance, before I reach out to them, I'm going to do a Google search on CIOs, healthcare priorities 2017, see what comes up. Read a couple of blog posts. If you guys use Feedly, Feedly, it's an RSS aggregator where I follow the thought leaders in the industries that I'm going after. I follow the thought leaders of the titles that I'm going after. I join LinkedIn groups with those people who are involved in those groups, not to troll for leads, but to listen to them, to listen to what kind of questions that they ask, what kind of vocabulary do they use. I even started reading books a while ago that executives read. I was embarrassed a while back when I was at my first startup company. I was about 24 years old, and we would always do dual sales calls. It was me and an engineer because I didn't know what I was talking about when it came to engineering. But I was the relationship guy, right? And so, I would walk in, and my job was to develop the rapport and then hand it over to the engineer, talk tech, and then bring it back. And this was back when Freakonomics, the book Freakonomics, had just came out. And I remember, I walked into this CEO's room, and my engineer was with me, Dylan, and he goes, and Freakonomics was on the guy's bookshelf, and my engineer's like, Dylan goes, "Hey, have you read that book? Have you read Freakonomics yet?" And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, I have." And they literally went off for like 15, 20 minutes on the book and all these different things and, ideas around it and all this other stuff. And I'm sitting there on the sideline like, Freakonomics, like, that's a funny name for a book. I felt like an idiot. You could literally feel the rapport being built between those two, and I'm just on the sidelines. So after that, I was like, you know what? I gotta start paying attention to what books CEOs read. So I'm not a big book reader, but now I'm getting all those kind of 3-page summaries of all the business books, just so I can ask better questions. And that's the key here, is I don't want to pretend like I know your world as a C-level executive, as CFO. Like, I didn't go to school to be a CFO. I don't know the details of, EBITDA and all that crap, but I want to know enough to ask better questions. I want to know enough. Instead of saying, "Tell me about your priorities," I want to be able to say something like, "Hey, we're working with other CFOs in the healthcare industry, and they're telling us that their top priorities going into 2017 are X, Y, and Z. Are those your priorities?" Even if they're not, the fact that you showed that you know their language a little bit tends to open up the door a little bit more, all right? And so that's where speaking to executives, really understanding, that language and kind of talking at that higher level. Again, you get pushed to who you talk like. If you talk features and functions and speeds and feeds, you're going to get pushed down to the admin level. You're going to get pushed down to the mid-level manager level. If you talk about industry and where things are going from a company level and some of the priorities as an organization, you have a chance there. So when you do have that chance to talk to that executive, you can leverage it. You can first of all make an impression, and second of all get some information that you probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise. All right. So that's why that preparation for when you're reaching out to executives or when you're having meetings with executives is so critical. So you're not just going through the template bullshit questions, right? You're not just going through the motions of your slide deck and your no executive wants to go through a slide deck presentation. They want to have a conversation. They want to be educated on something. That's why challenger sale is cool, but the whole idea of challenger sale is lead with insights, right? Or challenge. Now, I think it's challenging to challenge an executive, especially when you're not that thought leader, when you're not that industry expert. But lead with insights, you can do that. And the best way to do that is through all the social channels. And again, educate yourself on what's happening out there in the industry. Educate yourself what's happening with those people and what they care about. And share stuff. When you learn something, share it. Right? That's when you share it out on social. Or ask the question, hey, I was reading this report the other day that talked about moving into 2017, how artificial intelligence is going to impact this industry. And I want to get your thoughts on that. Right? And the reason I ask that is because, and make sure you have a reason why you're asking the question. All right? So I'm going to hit up some questions here from a couple of people, but hopefully, you can kind of think through that executive conversation and learn how to speak that language. And it's not that hard, right? You don't have to be that industry expert. All you have to do is be curious enough and educate yourself enough to be able to ask those better questions. All right? So a question coming in from Allie here. John, question, when you get a Q&A, what's the best way to get a CXO's attention through your prospecting? I sell a premium product with a high price tag, and often they are afraid to bring up the unique value because of my price, right? Good. That's a great question, Ali. It's funny because executives, it's rare that price comes up when I reach out to executives. Budget, by the way, is a bullshit objection. Bullshit. It's a complete bullshit objection because people below the power line, that's where budget comes from, right? Budgets aren't fixed. I know they're not fixed, by the way, because I used to be an executive, and we would sit down at the beginning of the year and kind of map out what our plans were, and, VP of sales, here's our budget, and I would have to justify that to the CFO, and my marketing CMO would have to justify that to the... But then middle of the year, if somebody came to me with some product and sold me on it that it was going to help me get to my targets faster as a VP of sales, and I didn't have the budget for it, but if they could justify it, I would go find the money for it. I would go up to my CFO and say, hey, CFO, I know I don't have the budget for this, but here's why I think this is going to make a difference, and I need some money. Okay, sorry, marketing, sorry. Maybe we'd pull money from other departments to give me the cash that I needed to go, or I'd have to double up my targets or something like that. And so the money's there. Budgets are fixed. The proof of that is priorities have changed. That's the other phrase, that proof is budgets aren't fixed. So, and I get to your question, Ali, about the price. Don't be afraid of your price. Premium product, executives, if you're selling to the right audience, right? I'm going to back up a little bit here and say, make sure that you're going after the right audience, and that's where account-based marketing, account-based selling comes in to really understand what that ideal customer profile is, because you can't sell value, for instance, to the dollar store. Like if you're trying to sell a premium product to the dollar store, it's going to be a little hard to justify that, right? Their margins are like 4 cents or something like that. But if your profile is clients that can get value out of that premium product and you can justify it, then go after them all day long. The story, I'm going to go back to when you prospect, to your question here, of when you prospect to them, it's about telling that story, about the value, 5, 6, 7 touches, right? It's not about the one email, it's not about the one voicemail, it's about the story you tell. So for instance, I assume my first email isn't going to be responded to, right? So that's why I got to sit down. When I sit down and I prospect to C-suites, I mean, by the way, I sell a premium product too. Like I am not the cheapest person out there when it comes to my training, and I'm not shy about it. And by the way, I don't discount at all. You know why? Because I don't have to, because I prospect all the time. That's one thing I found to solve a lot of problems, right? At every other stage of the sales process, negotiation, objection handling, discounting, all that stuff, all that gets solved with a big fat pipeline. Now, you got a big fat pipeline, you don't have to worry about it too much. Because I want to put myself in a position where I want your business, I don't need your business. All right? And so that's why I prospect consistently, even though I'm busier now than I've ever been. So going back to telling your story, Ali, sit down and think through, okay, who's that persona that you're going after? What are their priorities? Again, you might not be able to find that out because they're not a publicly traded company, but do a little bit of homework on them. CIO's priorities 2017, see what comes up. And then what aspects of your solution tie to those priorities? And maybe marry that up with some stories and some examples of other clients like them that you've been able to help and show value to. So for instance, by the way, small nugget here, don't ever tell somebody when prospecting, don't ever tell somebody you can help them do anything. You have no idea whether you can help me or not. But what you can say is you've helped other people like me, right? So that's where case studies are so important. I think case studies are my favorite way of selling. favorite way of selling, that story, because if I can say, hey, we showed this company in your industry how to drive these type of results, and I'd love to talk to you about it. That, I don't know if I can help you, but we've helped other people like you, and these are the results we've been able to see, or they've been able to see. And that is, by the way, your number one competitive differentiator. Your number one competitive differentiator when prospecting is the results you drive for your customers. If you don't have case studies or results, go get them. Do everything you can to negotiate. If you're going to give up discounts, go, get a case study, right? And so that's when Allie, to answer your question, tell a story, come up with a different point of value, right? If you have 4, 5, 6 different components of your value proposition that you can carve it up, right? So for me, I do meeting execution. So there's 2 ways people tend to prospect. One is they do a broad elevator pitch, and I'll use mine, hey, we do sales training consulting for Fortune 500 companies. It guarantees you the results you're looking for at every stage of the sales process. Or, hey, we do sales training consulting, and we do prospecting, meeting execution, negotiation, objection handling, and closing. Those are the 5 things I do, right? And I could probably wrap a nice, tight little message around that. But the problem is, say I send you that email or leave you that voicemail, and you don't respond. What's my next email? What's my next voicemail, right? So instead, it's touching base, checking in, all that crap. So instead, my first email to you is going to be about prospecting. You don't like that one? I don't care. My next phone call to you is going to be about negotiation. You don't like that one? Whatever. Here comes meeting execution. And I'm just going to keep poking at you. And if every single one of those is focused on your persona and trying to add value in some way, shape, or form, I might miss and miss and miss and miss. But then I might strike that nerve, all right? And I've been talking to a lot of executives these days and asking them, hey, when was the last time a sales rep reached out to you more than 3, 4, 5 times with a thoughtful, customized message that showed value? And they're almost like, yeah, I can't remember the last time. I said, look, if somebody did, if a sales rep actually reached out to you 3, 4, 5, 6 times with a different point of value in a condensed, maybe 30 days, something like that, after the 4th or 5th one, don't you almost feel obligated to get back to them? Every executive I talk to says, yeah, actually, I don't even know, even if I don't need what they are selling, I almost feel obligated to get back to them if they take a thoughtful approach. If they do the template stuff, not a chance, all right? So hopefully that helps, Sally. Question number 2, coming from Aaron. How do you handle it when a CEO kicks you down to another person, but the CEO is the one to make the decision? Great question. Because this is actually how it should work, actually, right? The CEO, and again, selling to smaller companies, if that CEO is the decision maker, but they delegate because they're, as a former VP of sales, even of a small company, like I hired people to do stuff for me, all right? And so I would have them go do the evaluation, then come back to me and tell me what they thought, even though I was the ultimate decision maker. And so you got to be careful about going over somebody's head just to go over somebody's head. Because if you go over somebody's head just because they're not the decision maker, you have a chance of pissing off both people. Because, for instance, say you're selling an HR solution or something like that, and you're talking to the HR director or manager, and they're not responding to you for some reason, or they're not being as responsive as you want them to, and you're like, you know what, I got to get to the John because he's the decision maker and whatever. When you reach out to me, if you're having the same conversation, or if you're asking me the same questions or something like that this person could answer, you're going to piss both of us off, right? Because first of all, you're going to definitely piss off this person. Second of all, you're going to piss me off because that's why I hire those people. So that's why when we start at that level, start at the C-suite, and that's why I like the way you asked your question. When your CEO kicks you down, all right, here's the way to work it. This is my favorite nugget almost out of all my training. So say you go after the C-level executive, say, hey, saw something cool, whatever it is, who can I talk to about that? And they kick you down here. Then when you have that conversation with that person, what you do is, I call it your summary email. I'm probably going to give this tip 50 times over the next 50 Facebook Live sessions because it's my favorite. But it's called the summary email. And what you do is, so let's put it this way. When you and I have a conversation today, okay, it's not that I'm lying. Like if you're selling to me, it's not that I'm lying to you. It's just that as soon as we get off this phone, my boss comes in and changes my priorities. Your competition comes in and talks to me about something completely different. So now 2 or 3 weeks later, it's almost like this conversation never happens, right? And you could be selling to something that's completely irrelevant at this point. And for you to try to remind me what I told you 2 or 3 weeks ago, shit. I barely remember what I said 5 minutes ago, forget about 5 days ago. So what you do is you go, hey, John, so again, C-level executive refers you down here. You have this conversation, then you go like this, hey, thanks so much for your time. There's some next steps and action items here. Before I go ahead and do all that, though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly summarize what I was able to gain from our conversation today, and I'm just going to send it to you in a quick email. Could you do me a favor and email me back to let me know if it's all accurate and if I missed anything? And in there, don't go crazy with this, okay? Just kind of bullet point out stuff. Your current situation's this, your timeline's this, your priorities are this. Priorities and timeline are the key there. Priorities and timeline. Next steps, you're going to do this, I'm going to do that. Competition's this, whatever. And then you send it to the person, right? The person below the power line. And then you don't even have to ask. If you got referred from the CEO, you don't even have to ask, by the way, to go back up to the CEO. This is a courtesy because they were the ones who refer you in the first place. So say Sarah's the one who referred you to Jim, right? You have this conversation with Jim. You then say, thanks so much, Jim. I'm going to briefly summarize what I was able to gain, and I'm going to send it over to you in a quick email. Could you do me a favor, email me back and let me know if it's all accurate and if I missed anything? Oh, and by the way, since Sarah was the one who referred me you in the first place, could you, I'm just going to forward this over to her and just keep her updated on our conversation, okay? Again, don't even have to ask. Then you take that email, you fire it off to Sarah. Hey, Sarah, thanks so much for the referral to Jim. Really appreciate it. Here's a few things that we talked about. Anything like you'd like to add from an executive standpoint? Right? And so see if Sarah engages there. And then if Jim goes dark on you, hey, Sarah, I'm not sure what happened to Jim here. Hopefully everything's okay. But based on your priorities and your timeline here, I just wanted to make sure that we stayed on track here. Is there, can I get a few minutes on your calendar and make sure that this stuff's still accurate? So there's a way to keep the C-level executive engaged without being overburdensome or overbearing or kind of forcing it when you don't need to. And the last point I'll make on that, Aaron, is again, just make sure you're asking that executive the questions that align with the executive level compared to the person you're dealing with. Because again, if you're asking the executive the same questions, the only way that you can really justify going over somebody's head is because you need information here that this person doesn't have. And so that's why, like I said earlier, asking them questions that they don't know the answers to. All right? But that summary email, try that out because it's a fantastic way of keeping that line of communication open without being overly salesy or pushy about it, okay? Good luck with that one. Question 3, Daniel. So during the sales rep's contact strategy touch point, when telling your story and providing value, how many touches, phone calls, voicemails, all that stuff do you suggest in being persistent versus annoying? Good question. There's two types of persistence. There's annoying persistence and professional persistence. Annoying persistence is touching base and checking in and circling back and did you get my first email and bubbling this one up to the top and and then the fucking breakup email, 1, 2, or 3, did you get, you're stuck under a rock bullshit. That's annoying. Professional persistence, let's put, my contact strategy is 6 unique touches in 30 days, okay? That's what I found to be effective for me. And I sell to VPs of sales and CEOs. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be yours, all right? The key to an effective contact strategy is the unique factor. First of all, it's more than 1 or 2, right? So it's got to be at least 5, 6, 7, something like that. Even more than that in some cases. I think anything more than 10 to 12, that's a little aggressive, depending on how you're going to mix it up. Like, I guess if you're going to sprinkle in calls without voicemails, that's okay, and if you want to consider that a touch. But I think, anywhere between 6 and 10 or 6 and 12 or something like that. But the unique factor is the key there, which is, and there's 2 forms of unique. One is using a different form of communication every single time. So email, call, social, email, in-mail, whatever it is, just mixing it up just to make sure you're kind of hitting them in all different places. But the other factor of unique is saying something different every single time. Just trying to bring a different piece of value every single time. And I think if every single touch is something different of value and it's a different maybe component of your solution, so again, email, prospecting, meeting execution, negotiation, objection handling, closing, maybe sprinkle in a few social things in there about sharing an article or 2. I read an article about them and hey, I saw this based on some research. Right, that to me is that's where you can be professionally persistent. If you got something new to say and you can tell a story, I think you can be pretty aggressive with your messaging, and that's where you can kind of kick it into the 8, 9, 10 range. But as long as it's different, maybe every once in a while you can throw the hey, did you get my email? Bubbling this one up to the top. Just especially if it was a really good one, and you can tell maybe you're tracking them and you see they didn't open it or something like that. That's when you can repurpose it. But mine's 6 unique touches in 30 days, and it's kind of email, phone, email, phone. It's kind of like a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday, Monday type scenario, and I might sprinkle in there some social stuff where I retweet them or share a post on or something like that. But that's where I've gotten to be, where I stay top of mind, but I'm not overly aggressive, and I'm not annoying. And I've gotten some pretty good luck with that one. But that's a last point I'll make on that is that's something you can absolutely split test, right? Take a group of accounts and do 6 touches in 30 days to this group, and then take another group of accounts and do 10 touches in 20 days or something like that, and see which one yields a higher response rate. You'll start to figure it out for what your product and who your persona is, and then you can start to really kind of hone in on what that looks like, all right? Forward, Callian, Fulton here. A prospect asked me about failures after showing a case study. I see your success. What about your failures? How do you answer that question without sounding cheesy? You answer it, man. Yeah, transparency is been my biggest. For me in my sales career, the more honest I am, the more deals I get. I tell people straight up where I fuck up. I'm like, yeah, we've done this. The client implemented it, and we screwed up. Our service. This is what happened. We've learned from it since then, and this is where we've gone. So I think honesty is always the best policy. Because they're trying to trust you as a sales rep. People buy from people they trust, and if you're trying to oh no, it's like. It's like in a interview. Like if you're interviewing for a job and they say, "What's your biggest shortcoming?" or something like, "Oh, I'm too hard of a worker." It's like, fuck you. For me, like my worst trait is my memory. I have a horrible memory, and so I think and I tell clients straight up where this is not the right fit and where it is. Where customers have implemented this and it's done really, really well, and where customers have implemented this and it's not gone well. But I give them the reasons why it didn't go well. And it was because either I didn't take the right approach or the right resources weren't aligned internally or those type of things. That's why I try to paint the picture, hey, when things go well, this is what it looks like, right? When things don't go well, this is tend to what happens. That's why when people push back on implementation fees and those type of things, I say, look, those, and by the way, there's something you might be able to set the stage for. I don't know what you sell there, but that might be something you can set the stage for as far as things to use later on in the negotiations. So when somebody says, well, what are your failures? Well, a couple of clients, it didn't really go well, it didn't get off right. They decided to not go with the implementation fees because they were trying to save a few bucks, whatever it is, but it ended up taking us 3 times longer to set them up, and then they didn't get that time to value that they were looking for. So then later on, when they start pushing back on you on all the costs, you can kind of say, hey, well, remember I talked earlier about some of the failures that you asked me about? Well, this is kind of some of the reasons why those failures happen. Like, we structure our relationships this way. We do these things for a specific reason, all right? And when they don't go that way, we don't do that just to make money. I mean, obviously we got to make money, but we do that for a very specific reason because we've learned over the years what works and what doesn't. So hopefully that one helps you. And Philip, let's see. Oh, actually, Lucas here. How do you deal with clients that are afraid of changing technology and stuck in the Stone Ages? Yeah, man, Lucas, that's a tough one, man. There's a lot of clients out there. I think that's where you just you nurture them. You do the sales nurture stuff, all right, where you just keep sharing them new ideas and things to think about. I keep saying this. I really do believe that our job, it's no longer telling clients about the features and functions and stuff like that about our services, because it's a Google search away. Our job these days is to get people to think. Right? Get people to think that right now steady state is not okay, because there's an app, there's a technology that's going to come out tomorrow and going to erase an entire industry. I use the dummy examples like Uber. Do you think the taxi industry had any idea that Uber was coming? Right? They had no clue, and now they're playing catch up, and they're never going to catch up. Airbnb. You think the hotel industry. I mean, there's example after example, and right now, we used to be in a world where technology displaced jobs, but it created a decent amount, so kind of a little bit even. Nope. It is now where technology is going to start displacing jobs at a rate that creating jobs is not going to be able to keep up. And so right now, my job is kind of like inception. It's like I want to plant that seed, right? And then nurture it and get you to hear something else to think about, hear something else to think about. So the ones that are just immediately adverse to changing, you're not going to get them to change overnight. You're not going to get them to flip immediately with some sales technique or some sneaky question or something like that. If they fit that ideal customer profile and you know that they can benefit from your solutions, then that's the ones you nurture the shit out of. And you do it from a thoughtful standpoint, from a sales, right? You figure out what to send them, how to get them to say, hey, there's other ways of doing it. And it might not even be my solution, by the way, but what you're dealing with is the Stone Ages. And if you don't get off of that, whether it's mine or somebody else's, you're going to be in trouble. So hopefully that one helped. Cool. So I think we're finishing up here. We're up on the hour here. So hopefully that you guys got some value out of that. I appreciate you guys for chiming in here. If you did get some value out of this, if you could do me a favor and just share the Jay Barrows Facebook page and tell people about Facebook Live here and Make It Happen Mondays, because I want to start building up this following. Again, my goal here is to try to add recurring value to my audience and answer questions. This is kind of like office hours, right? I answer a lot of stuff over Snapchat. If you want to hit me up on Snapchat, it's John M as in Michael, Barrows, all one word. Same thing on Twitter there. You can hit me up there with questions or hit me up on email, john@jbarrows.com. Anyways, everybody, make it a great day, all right? Make it happen. Cheers.